Now we need to write a script to handle the data once it's input by the user into our feedback form and sent to our send feedback PHP script. Let's open up a new text file and we'll save that as send underscore feedback.php. We're going to start this script the same way as we did with the others, with a title and a header, so that we can return some kind of HTML page to the user once the data has been successfully added to the database, or unsuccessfully, as the case may be. For a start, we need to check that all the data is there. Let's use a simple if statement, and this checks for empty variables. These logical not operators will say that if this field is empty, then this part of the statement will return true. And we separate each part of the expression with logical OR operators. So if any of the fields are empty, then this if condition will be carried out. Now we're not going to include the spam variable, which can either be set to 1 or 0, because in PHP the 0 value is the same as, in terms of the if statement, will read the same way as an empty field. Both of them will return false when the variable is evaluated. That will mean that if the user decides not to be sent any feedback, then if we added the condition like this, then the PHP script will treat it as if one of the fields was empty. Now, luckily, we don't have to worry about the workaround for that at the moment, because our database is set up so that if the field is not delivered, then it automatically fills in a 0 value for the spam variable. We need an error message that the user will see if they fail to fill in all the fields. And we can show this within our PHP script one of two ways. We need a hyperlink at the end here to send the user back to the feedback entry page so that they can try again. Now, we could echo all of this on one line, or on several lines if we wanted to split it up. But another way of doing it is to simply use an closing tag here and include all this text simply outside that part of our script. So in effect we create a little kind of landlocked piece of HTML, and then we go back into our PHP script with another of our PHP tags. Now, this is a matter of personal choice, and it depends very much on what kind of text we want to echo to the browser. If it's just a couple of words, it makes much more sense to use an echo or print command. If it's several lines like this, then we might find it clearer and easier to break out of our PHP script for a moment and then go back into it. It works in exactly the same way, however, and this text will only be output if this condition is true. So the next thing we need to do is to have an exit command so that if this condition is true, then the rest of the script will not execute, and we need to close that curly bracket that encloses that block of commands. Next, we're going to use a command called add slashes, and what this does is if the user happens to, within their script, within their input rather, add some character like quote mark, then when we come to evaluate that variable and use it within our SQL script, we could find some complications arising. So what we're going to do is use our add slashes command on each of these variables, and what that'll do is it'll just add a little escape character before any problematic characters that it could encounter, such as quote mark. So that all three fields have been put through that process, and now we need to make a connection to our database as before, and there we're going to select the correct database, Vinyl Dealers database, and then we're going to set up a SQL string. We're going to call this one add feedback. We could call it query as we normally do, but just to make it very clear what we're doing with our piece of SQL, we're going to use this format. What we're going to say is we're going to insert into the feedback table, and we're going to specify each of the fields. This is because within the structure of our feedback table there is an initial field which simply stores the ID number, which is going to make each piece of feedback have a unique identifier. So basically we don't want the username being put, or MySQL attempting and failing to put the username into an inappropriate field, such as the ID field. And we're going to have to use single quotes to surround our variable names, and we can either put them in very simply like this, which may seem like a very easy way of working, or we can do it the slightly harder way of including a close quote and a concatenation symbol either side of every variable. Now this may look like it's just adding a few extra keystrokes and extra work to what should be a simple operation, but with some configurations of PHP you may find that the facility that allows you to simply put variables into a string and for them to be evaluated has been disabled for greater efficiency. If you come across that, then that could cause some problems for you. So, for the sake of being able to deal with any kind of PHP setup, we're going to include all the double quotes and concatenation symbols. Next, we're going to run that query just like all the other queries we've worked with before. And then we're going to close out PHP script again, and we're going to put on a little message at the end to let the user know that their data has been successfully added to our database. Now there's no error checking as yet to make sure that really has been added to the database. We'll look at that in a later chapter, because that's a whole other can of worms. So there is our script. Let's save that. And we would, if this was for a real site, add some kind of link after this comment here to take the user back to the home page. There's no home page though in our sample setup, so we're not going to do that. Now I've added some data here to our feedback form, and as we can see, I've included one of the potential problem characters, this single quote, and our add slashes function should pick that up and deal with it anyway. So we're going to submit that data, and apparently our comments have been added to the database. Let's take a quick look at the MySQL monitor, and we'll see whether that's worked. As we can see, our latest piece of data has been added here. These other two fields are from earlier on when I was testing that PHP script. So as we can see, our piece of data has been successfully added to the database.